The young pilots thought Lieutenant Colonel Dana Reeves was past her prime. At 58, she'd been relegated to training duty while hotshot aviators half her age flew the real missions. They whispered she was too old, too cautious, too stuck in yesterday's tactics. But on this crisp morning at Edwards Air Force Base, as Dana strapped into her F-35 for what seemed like another routine training exercise, none of them knew they were about to learn the most important lesson of their lives. Dana Reeves walked into the briefing room at 0700 sharp, her flight suit pressed and boots polished. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she set her helmet on the metal table. 6 young pilots sat scattered across the folding chairs, some scrolling through tablets, others checking their phones. "Morning, Colonel," said Lieutenant Jake Morrison, barely looking up from his device. The others mumbled similar greetings. Dana moved to the front of the room and pulled down the projection screen. "Gentlemen, today's exercise is Defensive Communications Facility Bravo 7. You'll fly escort and patrol patterns around the installation." Captain Ryan Torres leaned back in his chair. "Sounds pretty basic, ma'am. We've run this scenario in the sim a dozen times." "Have you now?" Dana's voice stayed level. She clicked to the next slide showing aerial photos of the facility. "And how did those simulations go?" "Piece of cake," Torres said with a grin. "Modern avionics make it simple. Lock onto targets, press buttons, mission complete." A few of the other pilots chuckled. Dana noticed Lieutenant Sarachin shake her head slightly. "Simple." Dana nodded slowly. "Lieutenant Morrison, what's the wind speed at 15,000 feet over the facility right now?" Morrison glanced at his tablet. I'd have to check the weather report, ma'am." "You'd have to check." Dana walked over to the window. The flag outside hung limp in the still morning air. "Anyone else want to guess?" Silence filled the room. "The thing about simulations," Dana said, turning back to face them, "is they don't account for everything. Weather changes. Equipment fails. People make mistakes." She paused. "Enemies don't follow the script." Lieutenant Chen raised her hand. "Colonel, what's our real-world threat assessment for today?" "Good question, Chen. Intel shows all quiet in our sector. But we train like it's real because someday it will be." Dana clicked to the formation diagram. "Morrison, you'll fly my wing. Torres, you take the North Patrol. Chen, you've got South. Williams, East Patrol. Patterson and Stone, you're on high cover." Torres stretched in his chair. "No offense, Colonel, but can you keep up? I mean, with respect, you've been flying a desk more than a cockpit lately." The room went quiet. Dana felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came when young pilots questioned her abilities. She'd been flying combat missions when Torres was in middle school. "That's a fair question, Captain." Dana's voice stayed calm. "Tell you what. After we complete the exercise, we'll see who needs to keep up with whom." She moved to the tactical display. Now, the facility houses sensitive communication equipment. If this were real, losing it would compromise operations across 3 time zones. Your job is to make sure nothing gets through. Morrison looked up from his tablet. "What kind of opposition are we simulating?" "Unknown aircraft, various capabilities." Dana traced flight paths on the map. "Could be anything from light reconnaissance to heavy attack. Our F-35s can handle anything they throw at us," Torres said. "These birds practically fly themselves." "Do they?" Dana asked. "What happens when your targeting computer goes down? When your heads-up display fails? When you're flying on instruments in zero visibility?" Torres shrugged. "That's what backup systems are for." "And when those fail?" "Then..." Torres hesitated. "Then you fly with your eyes, your hands, and your brain," Dana said. "The same way pilots have been doing it for 100 years. She clicked to the weather forecast. "Conditions look clear, but there's a front moving in from the west. Could bring clouds and turbulence by noon." Patterson spoke up from the back. "Colonel, how many combat missions have you flown?" Enough to know that no two are the same. Dana looked at each pilot in turn. Anyone else have questions about the mission? Chen raised her hand again. Ma'am, what's our radio protocol if we encounter actual hostiles? Standard procedures apply. But remember, in a real situation, communication might be limited. You'll need to think for yourselves. Torres muttered something to Morrison, who smirked. Dana heard the whisper but ignored it. She'd been dealing with cocky young pilots for years. They always learned eventually. Some learn the easy way. Others learn the hard way. All right, gentlemen. And lady. Dana nodded to Chen. Engines start at 0800. Weather briefing at 0745. Any mechanical issues, report them now, not when we're airborne. The pilots began gathering their gear. Torres stood and stretched again. Hope you can keep up with us young guns, Colonel. Dana smiled, the same quiet smile she'd worn in briefing rooms from Afghanistan to Korea. Today, you might learn something they don't teach in simulators. As the pilots filed out, chattering among themselves, Dana remained at the front of the room. She looked at the aerial photos of the communications facility one more time. Something felt different about today, though she couldn't put her finger on what. The runway stretched out ahead like a black ribbon against the desert floor. Dana felt the familiar weight of her helmet as she walked toward her F-35, the morning sun already warming the tarmac. Ground crew members moved around the aircraft, checking systems and pulling away chocks. Red Leader, this is Red 2, ready for taxi, Morrison's voice crackled through her headset. Dana climbed the ladder and settled into her cockpit. Her hands moved automatically across the controls, checking switches and displays. 28 years of flying, and she still felt that small thrill when the engine spooled up. Red Flight, Tower Control. You're cleared for taxi to runway 27. Wind is calm, visibility 10 miles. Roger, Tower. Red Flight moving to runway 27. Dana released the brakes and felt her aircraft roll forward. The 6 F-35s formed up in parade formation, their gray shapes casting sharp shadows on the concrete. Dana could see Torres in Red 3 gesturing to Patterson in Red 6, probably making some joke about their elderly flight leader. Tower, Red Leader requesting takeoff clearance. Red Leader, you're cleared for takeoff. Contact departure on 124.7. Dana pushed the throttles forward. The engine's roar filled her ears as she accelerated down the runway. At 180 knots, she pulled back on the stick and felt the aircraft lift off the ground. The base fell away below her, becoming a collection of rectangular buildings and intersecting runways. Red Flight, climb to 15,000 and head bearing 270. Time to target is 12 minutes. The formation climbed through scattered clouds. Dana checked her instruments and scanned the sky around them. Clear blue stretched in every direction, with only a few white puffs of cumulus below. Red Leader, this is Red 3, Torres called over the radio. Permission to demonstrate the lightning attack formation? Dana sighed. Torres wanted to show off his simulator training. Negative, Red 3. Maintain standard formation. Come on, Colonel. We're just flying in circles out here. Let us show you what these birds can really do. Red 3, maintain assigned position and altitude. She heard Torres mutter something to Morrison, but couldn't make out the words. These young pilots thought every flight was a chance to prove themselves. They didn't understand that discipline and training meant survival in combat. Red Flight, approaching patrol area. Spread to assigned sectors on my mark. Dana looked down at the communications facility. It sat on a small hill, surrounded by chain link fence and guard towers. Several large satellite dishes pointed toward the sky. Mark. The 6 aircraft split apart, each taking their assigned patrol pattern. Dana flew a slow circle around the entire area, watching her students settle into their routes. Red 2, tighten up your pattern. You're drifting south. Copy, Red Leader. The minutes ticked by. Dana's radar screen showed the familiar green dots of her flight, moving in their predictable patterns. Below, she could see vehicles moving on the base roads and personnel walking between buildings. Red Leader, this is Red 4, Chen's voice came through clear and professional. I'm picking up some unusual radar contacts to the east. Very faint, intermittent. Dana looked at her own display. Nothing showed on her screen. Red 4, can you be more specific? Multiple contacts, bearing 090, approximately 50 miles out. They appear and disappear. Might be weather. Torres jumped on the radio. Red 4, there's nothing on my scope. You sure you're reading that right? I know how to read a radar screen, Red 3. Dana switched to a different radar mode and adjusted the sensitivity. Still nothing. But Chen was sharp. If she said she saw something, Dana believed her. All Red Flight, maintain current patrol patterns. Keep your eyes open for anything unusual. Red Leader, what exactly are we looking for? Patterson asked. Anything that doesn't belong. Aircraft without transponders. Unusual flight patterns. Trust your instincts. The formation continued its patrol. Dana found herself scanning the eastern horizon more frequently. The clouds seemed thicker in that direction, building into towering columns that might interfere with radar. Control, this is Red Leader. Can you confirm any scheduled air traffic in our patrol area? Red Leader, negative. You have exclusive use of the airspace for the next 2 hours. Dana frowned. Chen's radar contacts bothered her. Weather could cause false returns, but experienced pilots learned to tell the difference between clouds and aircraft. Red 4, still showing those contacts? Affirmative, Red Leader. Actually, they're getting stronger. Bearing 085 now, range approximately 30 miles. Red Leader, I've got them now too, Morrison reported. Faint, but definitely there. Torres's voice cut through the radio chatter. Whatever it is, it's probably just civilian traffic off course. Happens all the time. Dana didn't think so. Civilian aircraft had transponders. These contacts were showing up as raw radar returns only. That meant someone was flying without identification, which was illegal in controlled airspace. Control, Red Leader. We're showing unidentified aircraft bearing 085, range 30 miles. Can you confirm? Static filled her headset for several seconds. Red Leader, stand by. The delay was unusual. Control typically responded immediately to radar queries. Red Flight, close-up formation. Something's not right here. Ah, come on, Colonel, Torres said. It's probably just a training glitch. These exercises always have technical problems. Dana watched her radar screen. The contacts were definitely getting stronger and closer. Multiple aircraft, flying in formation, heading directly toward their patrol area. Control, Red Leader. Still waiting for confirmation on those radar contacts. More static. Then a different voice came through, one Dana didn't recognize. Red Leader, continue current mission. Disregard radar contacts. Say again, Control. Identify yourself. Red Leader, this is Major Wilson in the tower. Continue your patrol pattern. Dana had been flying out of this base for 3 years. There was no Major Wilson in the control tower. She felt ice form in her stomach. All Red Flight, this is Red Leader. Close up tight formation. We may have a problem. What kind of problem? Chen asked. Dana looked at her radar again. The contacts were now 20 miles out and closing fast. Too fast for civilian aircraft. Too organized for a navigational error. Control, request permission to break formation and investigate unknown aircraft. Silence. The radio crackled with interference. When the voice came back, it sounded strained. Red Leader, negative. Maintain, current position. Dana knew that wasn't the real control tower. Someone was jamming their communications and trying to keep them in a holding pattern. The hair on the back of her neck stood up. She looked down at the communications facility. If someone wanted to attack it, they'd need the defending aircraft out of position first. Control, request permission to break formation, she repeated. We have uninvited guests. The radio crackled with static before a new voice broke through, clear and urgent. Red Leader, this is actual control. We have hostile aircraft inbound to your position. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Dana's blood ran cold. She'd heard those words before, over the skies of Syria and Iraq. Her hands tightened on the controls as 28 years of combat experience kicked in. All red flight, you heard control. We have confirmed hostiles inbound. This is no longer an exercise. What? Torres's voice shot up an octave. That can't be right. We're in training airspace. Nobody's supposed to be here. Red 3, cut the chatter. Dana's instructor voice was gone, replaced by the steel of a combat veteran. All aircraft, switch to combat spread formation. Red 2, stay on my wing. Red 4, take high cover. Colonel, I don't understand, Morrison stammered through the radio. Are we really under attack? Dana looked at her radar screen. 8 contacts now, coming in fast from the east in 2 separate formations. Their speed and positioning left no doubt about their intentions. Red Flight, listen to me very carefully. You are about to engage in real combat. Everything you learned in the simulator matters now, but this is different. People die when you make mistakes. Chen's voice came through steady and professional. Red Leader, I have visual on the lead formation. For aircraft, looks like older MiGs. They're not showing any national markings. Roger, Red 4. Can you identify the second formation? Negative. They're staying low, using the hills for cover. Torres broke radio discipline again. This has to be some kind of advanced training scenario. They don't tell us about these things to make them more realistic. Red 3, if you don't shut up and listen, you're going to get us all killed. Dana's voice cut through the static like a blade. These are real hostiles with real weapons. Act accordingly. She could see the lead formation clearly now, for gray aircraft climbing toward their altitude. No friendly transponder signals. No response to radio calls. They were definitely hostile. Control, Red Leader. We have visual on 8 bogies. Request rules of engagement. Red Leader, you are weapons free. Defend the facility at all costs. Dana felt her heart rate slow down, the way it always did when combat started. Time seemed to stretch out. Every movement became deliberate and precise. All Red Flight, we are weapons free. Target the lead formation first. Stay in pairs. Do not engage alone. Red Leader, I'm picking up targeting radar, Chen reported. They're locking onto us. Evasive maneuvers. Now. Dana pulled her aircraft into a sharp right turn, feeling the G-forces press her into her seat. Morrison stayed glued to her wing, following her every move. Behind them, she could hear the other pilots breathing hard over the radio. Missile launch. Patterson's voice cracked with fear. I see smoke trails from the lead formation. All aircraft, defensive maneuvers. Deploy countermeasures. Dana punched the chaff and flare button and dove toward the deck. 2 missiles streaked past her canopy, their white exhaust trails like deadly fingers reaching through the blue sky. Red 2, stay with me. We're going after the leader. Roger, Red Leader. Right behind you. Dana pulled up from her dive and locked onto the lead MiG. Her targeting system showed a solid lock. The pilot ahead of her was turning hard left, trying to break her missile lock. Fox 2, Dana called as she fired her Sidewinder missile. The missile streaked away from her aircraft, its bright flame disappearing into the distance. She watched it track toward the enemy fighter, which was now diving desperately toward the ground. The missile struck the MiG's left engine. Fire and black smoke poured from the aircraft as it spiraled down toward the desert floor. Splash 1, Morrison called out. Nice shot, Colonel. But there was no time to celebrate. The remaining 3 aircraft from the first formation were turning toward the communications facility below. Red 3 and Red 5, intercept those fighters heading for the facility. Red 4 and Red 6, watch for the second formation. Where are they? Torres asked, his earlier cockiness completely gone. Still low, probably coming around from the south, Dana replied. She was already turning toward the facility, watching the 3 remaining MiGs descend toward their target. The communications facility sat on its small hill like a sitting duck. Dana could see personnel running between buildings, trying to take cover. The large satellite dishes made perfect targets. Red 3, you're closest to the facility. Can you intercept? I'm trying, but they're fast. I don't think I can get there in time. Dana did the math in her head. Distance, speed, altitude. Torres was right. The MiGs would reach the facility before he could intercept them. Red flight, the facility is about to come under attack. All aircraft converge on my position. She pushed her throttles to full military power and dove toward the facility. The G-forces made her vision gray at the edges, but she kept her eyes fixed on the 3 enemy fighters below. Red leader, you're going too fast, Morrison warned. You'll overshoot. Dana knew he was right, but she also knew something else. The MiGs were lined up for a bombing run on the communications center. If they succeeded, critical intelligence would be lost. American lives would be at risk. Red 2, take the trailing aircraft. I've got the leader. She lined up her shot carefully, leading the target just like she'd done 1,000 times before. But as her finger moved toward the trigger, her threat warning system screamed in her ears. Missile lock. Someone's painting me from the south. The second formation had finally shown itself. For more aircraft, climbing fast from the hills below. Red 4, where's that high cover? Dana called. Engaged with 2 bandits to the west. Can't break free. Dana was trapped. She could engage the fighters attacking the facility, but that would leave her exposed to the missiles from the second formation. Or she could defend herself and let the facility get destroyed. She made her choice. All red flight, this is Red leader. The second formation is larger than we thought. We've got at least 8 more aircraft coming in from multiple directions. Static filled the radio, then Torres's voice came through, tight with fear. Colonel, what do we do? We're outnumbered. Dana looked down at the communications facility. The first 3 MiGs were starting their attack run. Smoke was already rising from one of the buildings. Listen to me now, or we all go home in boxes. Dana's mind raced as she counted the aircraft on her screen. 12 hostiles total, coming from 3 different directions. Her 6-ship formation was outnumbered 2-1, and half her pilots had never seen real combat. Red flight, listen carefully. We're going to split their attack and make them come to us one group at a time. Dana rolled her aircraft inverted and pulled down toward the facility. Red 3 and Red 5, break left and engage the western group. Red 4 and Red 6, stay high and pick off stragglers. What about the ones attacking the facility? Morrison asked, his voice tight with stress. Red 2, follow me down. We're going after them now. Dana dove toward the 3 MiGs that were lining up for their bombing run. The facility grew larger in her windscreen as she dropped altitude. She could see people running for shelter below, some dragging equipment cases toward reinforced bunkers. Red leader, missile launch from the south formation, Chin called out. 2 inbound, looks like medium range. Copy, Red 4. Time to impact? 30 seconds. Dana had to choose. Engage the bombers or evade the missiles. If she turned away now, the facility would be destroyed. If she stayed on course, she might not survive the missile attack. Red 2, break right and defend against those missiles. I'm staying on target. Colonel, you can't take on 3 MiGs alone, Morrison protested. Watch me. Dana lined up on the trailing MiG and fired a sidewinder. The missile tracked true and struck the enemy fighter's engine. The aircraft rolled over and plunged toward the ground, trailing fire and smoke. But the other two MiGs had already started their attack run. She watched helplessly as bombs fell from their aircraft toward the communications building. "All personnel, take cover," she broadcast on the emergency frequency. The first bomb hit the parking area, sending a fountain of asphalt and twisted metal into the air. The second bomb struck closer to the main building, shattering windows and setting a vehicle on fire. Dana pulled out of her dive and climbed hard, trying to get behind the remaining two bombers. Her threat warning system was screaming as the incoming missiles closed the distance. "Chaff and flares," she muttered, punching the countermeasures button. The missiles streaked past her aircraft, confused by the clouds of metallic strips and flares she'd released. She turned hard left and found herself behind one of the MiGs. "Fox 2, she called, launching another sidewinder. This time the enemy pilot was ready. He pulled into a tight barrel roll and released his own countermeasures. Dana's missile lost lock and exploded harmlessly in the distance. "Red Leader, you've got two more bandits coming down from the north," Patterson reported. "They're fast movers, probably trying to catch you while you're low." Dana looked up and saw two more aircraft diving toward her position. The enemy was coordinating their attack, trying to overwhelm her while she was separated from her formation. "Red 5, Red 6, where are you?" "Engaged with 4 bandits to the west," Stone replied. "We're holding our own, but we can't break free to help." Dana realized the enemy had planned this perfectly. They'd split her formation and were attacking from multiple directions simultaneously. It was exactly the kind of coordinated assault that would overwhelm inexperienced pilots. But Dana had seen this before. Over Iraq, when insurgent fighters had tried the same tactic. The key was not to panic, not to let them dictate the terms of engagement. "All Red Flight, converge on the facility. We're going to draw them into a defensive circle." "Colonel, that's exactly what they want," Torres said. "They'll have us surrounded." "No, Red 3. They think that's what they want. But when you're surrounded, you know where all your enemies are." Dana climbed toward the facility, keeping her speed high. The two northern fighters were closing fast, but she timed it perfectly. As they dove toward her, she suddenly pulled up into the right. The MiGs overshot her position, their pilots struggling to follow her unexpected maneuver. Now she was behind them, with a clear shot at both aircraft. "Fox 2, she called, firing at the lead MiG. Her missile struck home, sending the enemy fighter tumbling toward the ground in a ball of fire. "Red 2, where are you?" Dana called. "Coming around from the east, Colonel. I've got the last bomber in sight." "Take him." Dana watched as Morrison lined up his shot and fired. His missile tracked straight and true, destroying the final aircraft from the first attack wave. But the battle was far from over. The southern formation was climbing toward the facility, and the western group was pushing hard against Torres and the others. "Red Leader, this is Control. We're showing at least 6 more aircraft approaching from the southeast. Estimated time of arrival, 5 minutes. Dana felt her stomach drop. 18 hostile aircraft total. Against her 6 defenders, that was 3-to-1 odds. Even with her experience, those weren't good numbers. "Red Flight, how's everyone on fuel and weapons?" "Red 3, I'm down to 2 missiles and 70% fuel." "Red 4, 3 missiles, 80% fuel." "Red 5, 1 missile left, 60% fuel." Dana checked her own status. 3 missiles remaining, 75% fuel. They were burning through their resources fast, and the enemy kept sending more aircraft. "Control, what's the status on reinforcements?" "Red Leader, nearest fighters are 20 minutes out. You're on your own until then." 20 minutes. Dana looked down at the facility. Smoke was rising from several buildings, but the main communications center was still intact. If they could hold out for 20 more minutes, help would arrive. But she was already losing pilots to fuel and weapons shortages. Torres was down to his last missile. Stone had taken damage to his radar system. Chen was flying with a cracked canopy from flying through shrapnel. Red flight, we need to make every shot count. The enemy is trying to wear us down with numbers. The southern formation was almost in range now. For more aircraft, flying in perfect formation. These pilots were better than the first group. They maintained discipline and didn't break formation even under fire. Red 4, can you get a lock on the southern leader? Negative, Red leader. They're jamming my radar. Electronic warfare. Dana should have expected it. The enemy wasn't just throwing aircraft at them. They were using sophisticated tactics to degrade her formation's effectiveness. All aircraft, switch to visual targeting. Trust your eyes, not your instruments. Dana dove toward the southern formation, relying on her decades of experience to judge distance and closure rate. The lead aircraft was turning toward the facility, probably carrying bombs or missiles meant for the communications center. She lined up her shot carefully, leading the target just enough to compensate for its turn. As her finger moved toward the trigger, her radio erupted with panicked voices. Missile launch from the southeast. More aircraft inbound, at least 8. Red 5 is hit. I'm losing hydraulics. Dana realized the enemy's true plan. While she'd been focused on the immediate threats, they'd been positioning even more aircraft for a final overwhelming assault. The facility wasn't just under attack, it was about to be destroyed by a coordinated strike that would come from every direction at once. She looked down at the communications center and saw personnel still running between buildings, trying to evacuate critical equipment. Whatever was in that facility, it was important enough that people were risking their lives to protect it. Control, what exactly are we defending down there? Static filled her headset for several seconds. When the response came, the voice was grim. Red leader, that facility houses the primary satellite uplink for intelligence operations across 3 theaters. If it falls, we lose real-time communication with forces in combat zones worldwide. Dana felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. It wasn't just about winning a training exercise anymore. Real soldiers and real battles were depending on the communications network below. They're not just attacking the base, she said to herself, then keyed her radio. Red flight, listen up. They're not just attacking the base, they're after something inside. Dana rolled her aircraft hard left as tracer rounds streaked past her canopy. The southern formation had closed to gun range, and their leader was a skilled pilot who'd been tracking her movements perfectly. Red leader, break right. You've got one on your tail. Morrison's voice cracked with urgency. Dana pulled into a steep climb, feeling the G-forces press her deep into her seat. Behind her, she could hear the whine of cannon shells passing close to her aircraft. Too close. Red 2, where are you? Engaged with 2 bandits to the west. Can't break free, Colonel. Dana rolled inverted and pulled down, trying to shake the MiG that was staying glued to her tail. The enemy pilot was good, too good. He matched every move she made, keeping his aircraft positioned for a killing shot. Her threat warning system suddenly exploded with alarm tones. Multiple missile locks from different directions. The new formation from the southeast had arrived and was lighting her up with targeting radars. Red flight, I'm spiked by multiple aircraft. Someone needs to help me out here. Working on it, Colonel, Chen replied. But we're all engaged. Torres is down to guns only, and Stone's aircraft is leaking fuel. Dana looked at her fuel gauge. 60% remaining. Her weapons display showed 2 missiles left. Around her, the sky was filled with aircraft, some friendly, some hostile, all moving in a deadly dance that would determine the fate of the communications facility below. A flash of light caught her eye. One of the southeastern aircraft had launched a missile directly at her. The white exhaust trail grew larger as the weapon closed the distance. Chaff and flares, she said aloud, punching the countermeasures button. Nothing happened. Dana hit the button again. Still nothing. The countermeasures system had failed, probably damaged by the cannon fire she'd taken earlier. "Red Leader, you've got a missile inbound and no countermeasures," Morrison called out. "You need to notch it." Dana knew what she had to do. She turned 90 degrees to the missile's approach and dove toward the ground, using her aircraft's speed and the missile's limited turning ability to break its lock. The missile streaked past her and exploded against the hillside in a ball of orange fire. But the maneuver had cost her. She was now low and slow, with multiple enemy aircraft above her. The MiG that had been on her tail was diving down, lining up for another gun attack. "Red Flight, status report," Dana called as she pulled out of her dive. "Red 3, I'm Winchester," Torres reported. "No missiles, low on cannon ammo." "Red 4, still engaged to the south. I think I damaged one, but there are 3 more coming in." "Red 5, my engine's running rough. I need to head home." "Red 6, fuel critical. Maybe 10 minutes left." Dana felt the situation slipping away. Her pilots were running out of fuel, weapons, and options. Meanwhile, the enemy kept sending fresh aircraft into the battle. She looked down at the communications facility. More smoke was rising from the buildings now. She could see emergency vehicles racing between structures, and people carrying equipment cases toward what looked like underground bunkers. "Control, Red Leader. We need those reinforcements now. My flight is combat ineffective. Red Leader, reinforcements are still 15 minutes out. You have to hold until then." 15 minutes. Dana did the math. With her fuel consumption rate and the damage to her aircraft, she had maybe 12 minutes of flying time left. Her students had even less. "Red Flight, we're going to try something different. Form up on me and head for the facility." "Colonel, that's exactly where they want us," Morrison protested. "We'll be sitting ducks. Not if we do this right. Trust me." Dana turned toward the communications center and began a slow descent. Her 5 remaining aircraft formed up around her, their gray shapes stark against the blue sky. The enemy formations immediately began converging on their position. 12 aircraft from 3 different directions, all heading for the same point in space above the facility. "Red Leader, they're going to surround us," Chen warned. "That's the idea, Red 4. When they get close enough, we're going to split in all directions. Make them choose individual targets instead of coordinating their attack." Dana watched her radar screen as the enemy aircraft closed in. 800 meters. 600. 400. "Red Flight, on my mark, break in all directions. Make them follow you away from the facility." The enemy aircraft were almost in gun range now. Dana could see the lead MiG's nose starting to track toward her aircraft. "Mark." 6 F-35s suddenly broke formation and headed in 6 different directions. The enemy pilots, caught off guard by the sudden maneuver, hesitated for a crucial second before choosing their targets. Dana pulled into a steep climb, drawing 2 MiGs up and away from the facility. Behind her, she could see Morrison diving toward the deck with another enemy fighter in pursuit. But something was wrong with her aircraft. The controls felt sluggish, and she was losing altitude despite full throttle. A quick glance at her engine instruments showed the problem. Her left engine was running hot and losing power. "Red 2, my aircraft's been hit. Left engine's failing." "How bad is it, Colonel?" Dana tried to maintain altitude, but her aircraft kept sinking toward the ground. The 2 MiGs following her had noticed her predicament and were closing in for the kill. "Bad enough. I'm not going to make it back to base." She looked at her options. Eject and let the enemy fighters strafe the facility unopposed. Try to nurse her damaged aircraft home and leave her students to fight alone. Or... Dana looked down at the communications center. The main building with its satellite dishes was still intact, but barely. One direct hit from the incoming bombers would destroy the entire facility. Her aircraft was dying, but it still had weapons. 2 missiles and a full load of cannon ammunition. Enough to make a difference if she used them right. "Red Flight, this is Red Leader. I'm going to stay and cover the facility. You break off and head for home. Colonel, no! Morrison's voice was sharp with panic. Your aircraft won't make it. You need to eject now. Negative, Red 2. Someone has to keep those bombers away from the target. Torres cut into the radio. Colonel, there are too many of them. You can't stop them all. Dana knew he was right. But she also knew that if the facility fell, soldiers would die in combat zones around the world. They'd lose intelligence networks that had taken years to build. The enemy would achieve their objective. Her left engine finally gave up completely, shutting down with a shudder that ran through the entire aircraft. Now she was flying on one engine, losing altitude steadily, with multiple enemy fighters closing in. Control, Red Leader. I need you to tell me exactly what's in that facility. Everything depends on it. Static filled her radio for several seconds. When the voice came back, it was quiet and grim. Red Leader, the facility houses more than communications equipment. It's the primary intelligence fusion center for ongoing operations. Real-time battlefield intelligence, troop movements, threat assessments. If it falls, we lose operational awareness across 3 active combat zones. Dana felt the weight of that information settle in her chest. Hundreds of soldiers were depending on the intelligence flowing through that facility. Their lives hung in the balance. She looked at her fuel gauge. 8 minutes of flying time left, maybe less with only one engine. Around her, the sky was still filled with enemy aircraft, and more were approaching from the distance. Her students were brave, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Without her experience and leadership, they wouldn't be able to protect the facility much longer. Dana made her decision. Red Flight, form up on me one more time. We're going to make our stand here. Colonel, your aircraft, Chen started to protest. I know the condition of my aircraft, Red 4. But I also know what happens if we fail. Listen carefully, because this is your final exam. Dana pulled her damaged F-35 into a wide circle around the communications facility. Her students formed up around her, their aircraft battered but still fighting. Here's what we're going to do, Dana continued, her voice steady and calm despite the chaos around them. I'm going to draw the main formation toward me. When they commit to the attack, you break off and hit them from behind. Colonel, that's suicide, Morrison said flatly. Dana looked down at the facility one more time. People were still running between buildings, still trying to save critical equipment. They were depending on her and her students to keep them alive. This is your final exam, she repeated quietly. Don't let me down. Dana's aircraft shuddered as she pushed the remaining engine to maximum power. The enemy formation was closing fast, 8 aircraft in perfect attack formation, heading straight for the communications facility below. Red Flight, remember what I taught you about patience, Dana said into her radio. Wait for my signal. Her students spread out around her damaged aircraft, their F-35s like protective wolves around an injured pack leader. Dana could hear their breathing over the radio, quick, nervous, but determined. Red Leader, you sure about this? Morrison asked. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Red 2. Dana rolled her aircraft toward the incoming enemy formation. Her threat warning system screamed as multiple targeting radars locked onto her damaged F-35. She ignored the alarms and focused on the lead aircraft. Here they come, she said calmly. Hold your positions until they commit. The enemy fighters dove toward her like hawks stooping on prey. Dana waited until the last possible moment, then pulled her aircraft into a steep climb that her failing engine could barely manage. The MiGs followed her up, just as she'd planned. Their pilots were so focused on the easy kill that they forgot about the 5 other aircraft waiting in ambush. Now! Dana called. Chen dove from above, lining up on the trailing MiG. Fox 2, she called, and her missile streaked toward the enemy fighter. Torres came in from the left, his cannon blazing as he raked fire across another MiG's wing. Morrison attacked from the right, forcing 2 more enemy aircraft to break formation. In seconds, the perfect enemy attack formation dissolved into chaos. But Dana's aircraft was dying. Her remaining engine was overheating, and she was losing altitude fast. Warning lights filled her cockpit like a Christmas tree. "Red flight, I'm going down," she announced. "But I'm not going alone." Below her, she could see the communications facility. The main building was still intact, its satellite dishes still pointing toward the sky. As long as those dishes were functional, soldiers around the world would have the intelligence they needed to stay alive. 2 MiGs had broken away from the dogfight and were diving toward the facility. They were carrying bombs, and Dana knew they'd destroy the building if they completed their attack run. "Red 2, Red 4, you've got bombers heading for the facility," Dana called. "We see them, Colonel, but we can't get there in time," Chen replied. Dana looked at her instrument panel. Engine temperature in the red zone. Fuel critically low. Hydraulic pressure dropping. Her aircraft had maybe 2 minutes of flight time left. But it still had weapons. "Red flight, this is Red leader. Take care of the remaining fighters. I've got the bombers." "Colonel, your aircraft won't survive another engagement," Morrison protested. "It doesn't need to survive, Red 2. It just needs to do its job." Dana rolled her F-35 into a steep dive, chasing the 2 bombers toward the facility. Her aircraft picked up speed as it fell, the damaged engine screaming in protest. The lead bomber was lining up on the main communications building. Dana could see the pilot adjusting his approach, preparing to release his weapons. She fired her last missile. The weapon tracked true, striking the bomber's tail section. The aircraft exploded in a ball of fire and debris, its bombs detonating harmlessly in the air. But the second bomber was still coming. Dana was out of missiles, and her cannon was her only remaining weapon. She pulled up behind the MiG and opened fire. Tracers streaked across the sky, some finding their mark on the enemy aircraft's wing. The bomber shuddered but kept flying, still heading for the facility. Dana's engine finally seized completely. The aircraft stopped climbing and began an uncontrolled descent toward the ground. She had seconds to make her choice. Eject and watch the bomber destroy the facility. Or stay with her aircraft and try to stop him. "Age and experience will always beat youth and enthusiasm," Dana said quietly into her radio. She aimed her dying aircraft directly at the bomber. The enemy pilot saw her coming and tried to turn away, but it was too late. Dana's F-35 slammed into the MiG at 300 miles per hour. Both aircraft disintegrated in a massive explosion that lit up the sky. "Colonel!" Morrison's voice cracked over the radio. Below, pieces of burning wreckage scattered across the desert floor. The communications facility sat untouched on its small hill, its satellite dishes still operational. "Red flight, this is Control. Enemy aircraft are withdrawing. Repeat, all hostile aircraft are withdrawing. The facility is secure." Chen's voice came through the radio, tight with emotion. "Control, Red leader is down. We need search and rescue immediately." "Roger, Red 4. SAR is already airborne." The remaining 4 F-35s formed up over the crash site, circling like guardian angels. Below them, emergency vehicles raced across the desert toward the column of black smoke. 20 minutes later, Torres spotted the rescue helicopter approaching the crash site. "There," he called over the radio. "I see someone moving near the wreckage." The helicopter touched down in a cloud of dust and sand. Rescue personnel jumped out and ran toward the scattered debris. Chen watched through her binoculars as they pulled a figure from the wreckage. "She's alive," Chen announced. "The colonel's alive." An hour later, Dana sat in the base hospital, her left arm in a sling and bandages covering burns on her face. Her students crowded around her bed, their flight suits still stained with sweat and adrenaline. "Colonel, how did you know that would work?" Morrison asked. Dana looked at each of them in turn. These weren't the cocky young pilots who'd questioned her abilities that morning. They were combat veterans now, forged in the fire of real battle. 40 years of flying teaches you things that don't come from books or simulators, she said quietly. Sometimes experience is the only weapon you have left. Torres stepped forward, his face serious. Colonel, I owe you an apology. We all do. We thought you were just an old instructor who couldn't keep up. Dana smiled, the same quiet smile she'd worn in the briefing room. And what do you think now, Captain? I think we're lucky to be alive, ma'am. And I think we learned more in one day than we did in 6 months of training. Chen nodded. Colonel, that thing you did at the end, flying your aircraft into that bomber, I've never seen anything like it. That wasn't flying, Red 4. That was just an old pilot doing whatever it took to complete the mission. A knock on the door interrupted them. A General Dana didn't recognize entered the room, followed by several officers. Colonel Reeves, I'm General Harrison from Intelligence Command. I wanted to personally thank you for your actions today. The facility you defended processes intelligence for over 50,000 troops in active combat zones. Your sacrifice saved countless lives. Dana shifted uncomfortably in her hospital bed. I was just doing my job, sir. No, Colonel. You were doing much more than that. You were teaching. The general turned to address Dana's students. I understand you all performed exceptionally well under impossible circumstances. Colonel Reeves spoke very highly of your courage and professionalism. Morrison stepped forward. Sir, we couldn't have done it without the Colonel. She showed us what real leadership looks like. 3 months later, Dana stood in front of another briefing room, facing another group of young pilots. Her left arm was still stiff from her injuries, but her voice was as steady as ever. Today's exercise is air-to-air combat tactics, she announced. You'll be facing multiple adversaries in a complex tactical environment. One of the new pilots, a cocky-looking lieutenant, raised his hand. Colonel, with respect, shouldn't we be learning from someone who's actually flown combat missions recently? Dana smiled. Behind the lieutenant, she could see Morrison, Torres, and Chen shaking their heads in amazement. That's a fair question, Lieutenant, Dana said calmly. Tell you what. After we complete today's exercise, we'll see who needs to learn from whom. As the pilots filed out to their aircraft, Chen lingered behind. Colonel, aren't you going to tell them about what happened 3 months ago? Dana looked out the window at the runway, where young pilots were walking toward their aircraft with the same swagger and confidence she'd seen 1,000 times before. They'll learn when they're ready, Red 4. They always do. Chen smiled and headed for the door. As she reached it, she turned back. Colonel? Yes? Thank you for teaching us that experience matters. Dana nodded and began gathering her briefing materials. Outside, engines were starting up, and another generation of pilots was about to learn that there was no substitute for wisdom earned through years of service and sacrifice. The lesson would continue, just as it always had, passed from one generation of warriors to the next. Dana Reeves proved that wisdom earned through decades of service never goes out of style. If this story of heroism and sacrifice moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more inspiring military stories. Share your thoughts in the comments below.